I'm the moderator for the session, and my name is Pooja Raj. So basically, I'm a PhD scholar from Delhi University, but I am also one of the active volunteers from In Dialogue Foundation, and I welcome you all to this session where the theme of the session is towards gender neutral amity, challenges and recommendations. And the speaker for the session will be Dr. Reetu Jaiswal. She is an assistant professor at Department of Philosophy, University of Delhi, and her areas of interest are social and political philosophy, philosophy of science, logic, epistemology, ethics, etc. And I'm gladly here to say that she is my supervisor as well. So I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Proceed with the lecture. And also, before proceeding, I would request every audiences to note down their questions or recommendations or any comment in the comment section of the session, and you can ask these questions at the end of the session. And the lecture will be of 30 minutes, and then you can post that 15 minutes of question answer round.
So is it too strict, or can I take 5 or 10 more minutes?
I guess we are flexible now.
Okay. So I will need to share my screen. Yeah, okay. I guess I have already found this thing. Okay. Wait. So is my screen visible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So should I start?
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Although it's evening, sorry. Yeah, evening. So good evening, everyone. And my name has already been introduced by Pooja. And I'll be speaking on towards a gender neutral amity, challenges and recommendations. So in this Corona period, obviously, we are dealing with so many challenges. And one of them is obviously the gender discrimination and gender-based problems. But this lecture is not only limited to that. I have tried to accommodate a few more issues which are not only limited to gender discrimination. I hope you would like my lecture. So with these few words, I would like to start with the first section of the lecture. It is divided into two sections. In the first section, I will try to talk about how gender has been very influential in our lives, but it has been very been misunderstood by most of the people, and how people have thought that when feminists claim for some rights, then what do they want? So I would like to clarify these some of these claims, and in the next section I will try to come up with a few ideas of how we can establish a gender neutral society and whether we can do that or not. So there will be some challenges. I'll be raising questions from my sides, and I will be trying to answer them as well. So I'm starting without any ado now. That generally introducing a contestation against gender discrimination, that discrimination is a very commonly known and inadequately understood concept, because obviously everybody thinks that okay, gender discrimination ho raha hai, let it happen, it doesn't matter, because we generally think that it is natural for us to be divided into two genders, where men are naturally the stronger ones and women are naturally the weaker ones. And this natural understanding of these two sexes creates a fussy arrangement of the society. So where I, on the one hand, question such natural arrangement, but right now I would like to say that what other feminist thinkers say, these feminist thinkers say that no, there is no natural as such natural distinction between these two genders. And if they say something about or in favor of women, then there comes another argument from the other side, from the left side, right and center, that even men are suppressed due to the gender in this patriarchal society. So yes, there is this huge debate whether women are suppressed or not, or only women are suppressed. But I actually neither deny these claims nor do I oppose them, but I think that these questions are very crucial for any feminist discourses. However, I would not like to indulge myself into dealing with these questions because I have to do something else. In this section, I will be trying to find out that what do we expect from any feminist discourse, and what really I'm going to do in this lecture. So I would like to say that, probably people will think that I'll talk about these distinctions between how people look at women's suppression and how people talk about men's suppression. But no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to do that for two reasons. First is that feminism, I think that feminism is a very notoriously understood concept, and the concerns of feminism are majorly lost in the misplaced dialogues. Like the earlier mentioned example, that some people say that only women are not oppressed, men too are. Although feminism never denies this, at least the sort of feminism I believe in. But yeah, I'm not going to indulge with such kind of debate. And second reason not to indulge with such kind of discussion is that if we keep engaging ourselves in such kind of discussions in this time when we are struggling with not only a pandemic corona, but so many other natural atrocities as well, we will not be able to cope with them together in a more effective and efficient way. So we don't have to look at the differences between women and men's problems. We have to come together. We have to be together in this endeavor to fight against corona and other pandemics and this gender-based hierarchy. So in this period, we need to reflect over and focus on being and working together. In this endeavor, it becomes crucial to think about the ways the world is affected by so many mayhems which affect all the genders equally. In spite of the above mentioned approach being very positive one and a valid one, I do not completely fall for the idea. As whatever be the case, whether it is a social, political, economic, or natural havoc, they foster different and unequal results for different genders. However, this does not mean that I am going to give a very pessimistic look that this world can never have a gender neutral arrangement. But the idea is to think of a world where no matter what we look at each other, no matter what we look at each other differently without being affected by the sense of racial, sexual, or caste-based hierarchies, and with no thought of suppressing the other in the name of these identities. So my contention here is very clear that a gender neutral amity does not necessarily ask for a negation and rejection of the sexual identity of people. It requires its positive and fruitful acceptance. So this might sound like a sermon which advocates and promises a best of the possible worlds, or in other words, a utopian world where we can be able to achieve this gender neutral arrangement. But after facing such havocs like corona, armed fun, and a number of earthquakes, it feels like it is the best time to reflect over the ways in which we can in which we have constituted and run our society till now. I think that I'm not too fast. If I'm too fast, just let me know. Okay. Now, the other point which I would like to mention is the natural havocs. And the question is whether they are lopsided, whether they have lopsided effects on humans. My argument is that when we look at the natural viciousness and the sort of glimpse we get out of that it is like imperceptible, and it is subduing, and it is overpowering. But at the same time, it doesn't do any kind of discrimination with anyone. It affects everyone almost equally. So when these natural mayhems happen, they don't discriminate between people of various genders, caste, or races. We can argue that probably people of upper class might be less affected by them, but at least not in the case of corona. So, nevertheless, the repercussions of these destructions and devastations mostly affect people according to their situatedness in society. So it's like, when they affect us, they try to they affect us equally, but the repercussions which we feel is affects us differently. I would like to give the example of a corona affected world, where if we only talk about how it has affected the so-called two primary genders, men and women. I'm sorry, I'm skipping the mention of other genders willingly, because to just to make it simple, just to make this lecture simple. But this does not mean that I don't include them. So we see a lot of differences between their situation due to their gender identity. So what kind of effects we see on women? If we look at some of the publications which have recently come in New York Times, Indian Express, and The Guardian, they have published that women have been suffering more from mental stress and anxiety more than men, as they were burdened with double responsibility of looking after most of the household chores and fulfilling the increased official workload too. So it is not the case that men did not participate in helping these women, but it is yet considered to be the fundamental responsibility of women to look after their children, their homeworks, and the demands of food. On the other hand, it was optional, largely optional, for men to help them or not. And it was on their will to what extent they want to engage with such kind of household chores. So another important issue, which is very important to be raised here, is that of domestic violence and physical abuse of women. So which has increased in this period. So we can understand that, how it has negatively affected women, especially in the corona period. But this is a very generalized understanding of how different genders have been affected differently by corona and other natural havocs. I would like here to draw your attention to very different problems which I have been very concerned about. That the question is that, have women been locked down forever? So this question leads me towards this further reflection, or whereas all these problems might be quite understandable and general, I want to raise a few more issues which were mostly neglected in these studies. So the first issue which I would like to draw your attention to here is people found it very difficult to stay at their homes for 24 hours without going out, meeting others, hanging out with people. And generally the misogynist men who don't do any household chores, they generally don't have anything to do other than the work from home. So they find it very challenging to be locked down inside their own home. But on the other hand, they normally expect their housewives to stay at homes all the day and do the domiciliary work. These women are mostly dependent on their husbands or sons or fathers to go out, and are not allowed to go anywhere without their permission. How difficult it is to live like this, but they make their lives to look like a piece of cake. I even think of my case, that I have so much of freedom that I can go anywhere I want to go. And then I can only say that I can only sympathize with sympathize with their cases, and I cannot empathize. uh, on the other hand, the second problem, another issue, is that of wearing a mask and going out. Everybody is making a fuss about it, that the wearing a mask is very problematic, and it's too hot here, and blah blah blah. So how difficult it would have been for all those women to veil not only their faces, but sometimes their whole body, and that too not only when they go out, but also when they remain inside their houses. And yet they have accepted these practices as a part of their religion and tradition, and perform them effortlessly. Can we stop for some time and think about the situation of all these women? Uh, so by explicating these two examples, I wish to argue how important it is to think of a gender neutral society, where half of the human race would not have to face something which is unbearable even during the pandemic like corona. With these points, where I have presented that how it has become very difficult for women to live in this corona period, I'm moving forward towards the next section of my paper, which deals with the possible worlds, with gender equality or gender neutrality. And out of these four possibilities, the first one is starting, the heading is starting from the genesis. So it's like some sort of sarcasm that I think that first option could be to go back, if we want to establish a gender equal society. So first option could be to go back to the Garden of Eden, where Eve was held responsible for the fall of the mankind. Okay, so it was not the fall of womankind, it was only the fall of the mankind. So I don't know how women fell into that, when it was believed that due to her projected fault, she lost her independence and submitted to the dominating patriarchy. So how, it is very, I would say that funny thing to say, to see that the fall of, because of the fall of the mankind, women were submitted to the dominating patriarchy. Yes. Okay. Next point is that she had to take the blame on herself, and that is why she internalized her inferiority to Adam. So, to change the gendered understanding of this world, perhaps we will have to go back and reinterpret the Genesis. And instead of that, to develop a more positive character of Eve, who is equal to Adam and as independent and intelligent as Adam is. This has been done to some extent by John Milton in Paradise Lost, but even he couldn't save Eve from the submission and dominance of Eve. So the next point says that there will be no binary understanding of gender. If that would be the case, if we could present a more positive understanding of Adam and Eve's situation, both of them will be equally rational, emotional, nurturing, and interdependent. This new Eve could be the one portrayed by the protagonist of Charlotte Bronte's novel Shirley. Shirley, who pictures a new Eve, another first woman and mother of the human race, heaven born, vast, grand. This Eve is the undegenerated head where rested the consort crown of creation. So, this if this could kind of possibility, this kind of combination could be possible, then obviously Adam and Eve would become equal to each other, and the whole problem of gender inequality will be sorted out. But the question is, can we do this? Okay. Can we really go back and challenge all those questions which have been raised by so many feminist critiques, that women are not dependent, they are not subordinate, and they are not inferior to men naturally? Okay, so because if Eve was inferior to Adam, then obviously women are naturally inferior to men. These statements will make Simone de Beauvoir's famous claim, one is not born but rather becomes a woman, false and meaningless, because then there would be no need to question the natural status of the genders to render them socially constructed. This seems not only challenging but also impossible, as the very his story of the dominance and subordination of the woman is written and interpreted by men, and how we are so conditioned to think in these terms that it looks almost impossible to transgress this social and religious arrangement and reconstitute the world. So my in conclusion would be that it is almost next to impossible to go back and change these things. So I'm coming with the second possibility, which would be to following what happened at Seneca Falls. I hope all of you are well aware of what has happened at Seneca Falls, but if you are not, I will give a brief introduction here, that in the history of feminism, this incident is one of the most memorable, courageous, and impactful events, when on July 19th, 1848, a group of women and men entered the church in Seneca Falls, and with a few modifications accepted an agenda prepared by four women. So the point to be noted is that it was prepared by four women and was accepted by men too. The agenda, which was called the Declaration of Independence, it declared, I quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness," unquote. So, you can see here that it is actually a declaration of independence that women and men are equal. So what happened after this declaration of equality and all? This incident gives us a hope that one day all women and men, if we don't mention the other genders, will understand and participate together in this revolution against the torments of patriarchy and establish the much awaited and longed for equality. uh, Once again, yeah, the idea seems to be very nice that, yeah, if they can do it, why can't we? But once again, the question comes whether this seems to be a real situation, whether there will be a day when men will understand that women are suppressed and women will understand that not all men are the dominating ones, whether there will be a day when the upper class women and men will understand that lower class women should not be made vulnerable just because they come from a lower class and caste, whether there will be a day when women will not be raped or sexually harassed just because men can physically overpower them, whether there will be a day when women and men will not be objectified in the name of economic growth, sexual satisfaction, and imposition of one's power. There are only a few questions that, these are some of the few questions that don't do justice with the kind of suppression and tortures are borne by women, men, and other sexed people in the name of their sex, class, caste, race, etc. The establishment of gender equality is not limited by only the above mentioned discriminations, but includes all sorts of suppressions done in any form. Today, when we are suffering from so many issues like corona, cyclones, Amphan, if we can't come together in this need of our forgetting our greed, creed, and seed, we can never achieve gender equality. So with these words, obviously I want to say that it becomes very difficult and challenging for us to forget about our orientations and how privileged we are in some senses, and to try to indulge with others and respect them equally. So it seems very difficult to follow the steps, whatever the step which was started at the Seneca Falls. So I come up with the third possibility, ignoring the past, promoting the future, a step towards gender neutrality. So what past we are trying to forget and what future we are trying to promote here, we will see now. That another approach to establish gender equality could be to make this world gender neutral, which means we ignore how unequal these two genders have been and start treating them on par with each other, as, according to the claims of feminist thinkers and revolutionists, both of them are equally rational, independent, intelligent, and capable of doing everything. So yeah, it's nice. So, feminists want equality, gender neutrality. Okay, we too think that, both of them are equal to each other, and that is why we should treat them equal. So, in that sense, we are trying to ignore the past, that actually women have not been equal till now. That rather than being a solution, it seems to be a revenge against the feminist claims that women are not subordinate but are equal to men. Because if half of the human race has been denied opportunities and rights since the time immemorial, how can we consider them equal and make laws considering them equal? So does that mean that women are actually weak and subordinate? So either you think that, they are equal, or you say that they are not equal. They cannot be, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. So that could be the argument from the other side. But here I would like to say that there is a fallacy in understanding the arguments given by all the feminist scholars. They are not saying that women have been equally treated and should be treated the same, but they are believing that they are asking for that women are equal and have not been treated to be so. And this has been put forth in front of this world at least since last 200 years, if not more than that. So the problem is that they are equal, but they have not been considered to be the equals. So in this reference, I would like to quote Sandra Lipsitz-Bems, who is arguing that, surprising as it may seem at first glance, recent economic studies have demonstrated that women as a group are so economically disadvantaged in US society today as they were in 1960, with only the subgroup young, white, unmarried, and educated women showing any substantial economic progress, and with everyone else so segregated into the lowest paid occupations and part-time work that overall women as a group still earn a mere 65% or so of what men earn. The claim is that they are equal, but because they were not equipped with proper means for attaining that equality due to the androcentric nature and structure of society, hence there should be additional arrangements for their upliftment. We cannot build a future by ignoring the past, which has made the present very unjust and unfair for some and very advantageous for others. Now, since I have already told that we cannot ignore our past, so I'm coming with the fourth possibility, which is that recognizing the past, staying in present, and working for future towards a gender neutral amity. So how are we going to collaborate past, present, and future in this fourth possibility? Let us look at that. So the above mentioned three options were referring to the cases of the past. Okay, so to change the world, we either had to go to the past or would have to learn from the past and follow that. This option deals with what we can do today. If we really want to achieve the utopian degendered or gender neutral world, we will have to initiate taking steps from this lecture. So start from this lecture that instead of saying good evening, ladies and gentlemen, we should say good evening, my dear friends and colleagues. So that is going to make it very gender neutral. And, that will be a first step towards establishing that. We will have to say good evening, my friends, instead of saying, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We will have to say, my mother and father, instead of saying my mother and father, we'll have to say my parents. Instead of saying my sisters and brothers, will have to say my siblings. And furthermore, when we change the language we use for referring to someone, that gradually changes our attitude towards people. Old people become senior citizens, physically challenged people become differently abled people, and our daughters and sons become our children. So that ways we take one step and move towards the establishment of and creation of a gender neutral society. So in this reference, I'm quoting Judith Lorber, who says in her article, A World Without Gender, that degendering as a viable form of resistance has to be deliberate, structural, and independent of sexed bodies if existing gendered social orders are to be transformed. Degendering needs to be focused on how people are sorted and allocated tasks in work organizations, schools, small groups, families, and other familiar social groupings. Degendering means not assigning tasks in the home and workplace by gender. Degendering means not grouping children by gender in schools. Degendering means confronting gender expectations in face-to-face interaction and underplaying gender categories in language, not saying ladies and gentlemen, but colleagues and friends. So she is in a way making it very clear that what could be the actually practical ways of degendering some of the ways till now we have been following. So that could be another step in the way of achieving our ultimate end of gender neutrality. So in order to support my argument, I would further like to quote here Sandra Lipsitz-Bem, who says that I argue that if people in this androcentric, gender polarizing and biologically essentialist culture are ever to understand why sexual equality would necessarily require a radical restructuring of social institutions, the cultural debate about sexual inequality must be reframed so that it addresses not male-female difference, but how androcentric social institutions transform male-female difference into female disadvantage. Yes, I agree that without changing the androcentric, gender polarizing, and biologically essentialist culture, and without understanding how it is going against the welfare of the females, we cannot establish sexual inequality. But I think that there are some other things which also need our attention. So, and that other thing is the intersection of identities. So it is not only our gender which is creating problems for us. It is all of our identities which are actually so intermingled with each other that if you look for one, if you care for one kind of disadvantage, other kind of disadvantage will occur. So I would like to take one step further, and I would like to say that until we stop transforming differences between different races, genders, castes, religion, classes, etc., we cannot establish a gender neutral world, because gender does not exist in a vacuum. It is embedded within a class structure, a caste structure, a religious framework, a sexual orientation, and all of these intersect with each other. That is why Uma Chakravarti, Uma Narayan, Kumkum Sangari, and Suresh Ved proposed, thinkers like these have proposed that there is not a patriarchy, there is no single patriarchy, but there are patriarchies, and our identities construct these patriarchies as well as they are constructed by them. So they are intermingled in such an intricate way that it is almost next to impossible to separate them from each other and then fight for any one of the agenda. So the point which I want to focus here is that if we think that we are only fighting for the rights of women, we'll have to forget about achieving this agenda or fulfilling this agenda, because when we start fighting for the white women, black women will start asking for their rights. When we start asking for upper class women, lower class women will start asking for their rights. So it's like, in everything is so intermingled with each other that any kind of disadvantage, any kind of suppression done in the name of any identity will also influence the disadvantage or advantage on the another level. So it would be better that we take these steps not to do any kind of discrimination in the name of any sort of identity. So once again, Lorber argues that I quote, feminist movements have focused on the inequalities and exploitations, especially in the gendered work, world, and domestic division of labor, but have found that as one set of gendered practices is eliminated, others rise to take their place, unquote. So it's very clear that it will always occur and reoccur until or unless we go at the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is that we are not understanding that we are human beings and we are different. And we will have to accept that difference and respect that difference too. We do not have to create a hierarchical arrangement on that basis. So what are the challenges if we are trying to work for this kind of gender neutral society? One can argue that this is very frustrating and exhausting too, as when we are not able to establish gender neutrality, one among the so many ends, how can we resolve these n number of issues which are mentioned here? Class bhi dekho, caste bhi dekho, religion bhi dekho, gender bhi dekho. So it would be almost impossible to, handle so many issues together. So, the question might seem very puzzling, intricate, precarious, enigmatic, whatever adjectives is coming onto your head, you put it on, and it could be applicable here. But the solution, although is even though the solution is not simple, the steps are quite clear. We cannot change the social institutions until we change ourselves. We need to do something to not waste the prowess shown by the people who are struggling day and night for achieving this utopian world, starting from Seneca Falls. So, as Mahatma Gandhi has said, that although it is difficult to reach the truth and establish a Ram Rajya, but the idea of these encourage us to work towards them. So yes, I know that whatever I'm talking about might be very utopian and might seem to be very ideal, but if we have some ideal, some utopian framework in our mind, then only we can start working for that. Otherwise we will be just roaming here and there without any direction. So at this moment a few questions might arise, but men and the questions could be that, but men and women are different and their difference is natural. Only women can do reproduction, and hence the responsibility related to that has to be associated more with them than with men. Men are supposed to earn and take care of financial requirements of the family, etc., etc. First of all, the difference between these two or any other gender is not natural, but biological, and hence could be changed too. Secondly, I will not go into that debate, and I will confine myself to the view that there is nothing natural when it comes to taking or tagging a responsibility with someone. Okay, so there can be some biological limitations, yes, but it's not necessary that all the responsibilities are related to that biological aspect is tagged with one person or one race only. So probably we have not understood that it is not the difference we have among ourselves, it is not the different work we do, but it is our attitude towards them which makes this world unjust and unfair. It does not matter who is working what, because ultimately, in order to survive, it is indispensable that we work, and all the works are as important as the other, no matter whether they are equal, they have equal economic value in the market or not. At least in this corona period, we have understood that very well. This corona period has probably given us this understanding very clearly that the contribution of a maid is as important in the economic growth, physical and mental well-being of people, as is the contribution of a prime minister. So we cannot ignore any of them. And hence, this gives us an eye-opening experience that we need to respect all works and workers, even the kudawala who takes our garbage away from us. If we follow these lines of thought, then probably we will not raise the questions regarding the distinction between the public and private sphere and the problems of motherhood, which have been quite known for any feminist discourses. Some other questions could be that now so many legal, social, political steps have been taken in order to save women from suppression or to give them equal status with that of men. This can be argued similarly for other marginalized groups too. Yes, it is true that so many positive steps have been taken to make the positive law favorable to the downtrodden and marginalized ones. But are they bringing any positive change in the society? The thing is that the natural law, which we all have internalized, that there are differences between people, and these differences are not without reason, but are underpinned in our social, biological, political, and religious structures, and hence cannot be questioned, will have to be questioned. Until this change until these change, positive law cannot do anything. For example, women are allowed to go out in the night, but can they? Women are allowed to have equal rights in their houses, but are they not sexually exploited? Lower caste and class men and women are entitled to get a good pay as per the rules of government, but do they? There are so many rights, but little applications. In order to support my argument, once again, I would like to quote Lauber, who ventilates, because she is so frustrated that she ventilates by saying that the institution of gender has certainly evolved in Western societies. Women and men now have formal equality in all the major social spheres. In so many countries, no laws prevent women from achieving what they can, and many laws help them do it by preventing discrimination and sexual harassment. More and more countries are ratifying laws to protect women's procreative and sexual rights, and to designate rape, battering, and genital mutilation as human rights crimes. But women are still responsible for childcare and men for economic support of children, skewing women's wages in the job market and chances for career advancement. The continued gender division of labor in the job market and in the home is the bedrock of gender inequality. At the very least, the gender division of family work and the gender practices of work organizations and their interconnections need to be degendered if we are to create true and permanent gender equality, unquote. So at last, I would like to give the recommendation for establishing gender neutral amity. So legal rights, political equality, and gender neutral society will be meaningless and empty terms until we make efforts towards their realization in our lives. This kind of arrangement does not create walls around the lives, identities, and works of people. People are not made by their identities. Identities are made by people. Lauber further argues, I'll skip the first portion of this quote because I guess, there won't be much time. And the second part of the quote says that what is most important about degendering is that formal bureaucratic categories and the formal structures of organizations not be built on gender divisions, nor should workplaces, households, and childcare. So in the concluding part, I will now say that what we have to learn is that we don't limit ourselves in recognizing only those issues that affect us or our people, but be aware and sensitive to the injustice done to other people too in the name of some other identity. This does not overburden us with lots of things to be handled at once, but expects a small step towards refraining from committing such unjust acts or suppression of anyone, even by our language. So here, Mary Evans says, quotes Gillian Rose, that in her views, we have become more sentimental towards ourselves and more ruthless towards others in the late 20th century and early 21st centuries. The above is, of course, a view of the world which is contentious, raising it a prelude to posing the question of where feminism and the question of gender should stand and does stand in the social world. The majority of Western societies have achieved legal and civic equality between men, women, and men, even though gender still impacts upon all aspects of social life. But 200 years after the end of the Enlightenment, we are still living in a world in which male authority remains greater than that of women. Step out of the West, and men can dictate how women dress. So, with these final line, I will end my lecture that a so-called utopian world could be achievable if we learn from our past and apply that in the present and change our future. This period of natural havocs could be a good time to reflect over all those questions raised above and thinking of the ways out deliberated on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this enlightening lecture. So I hope everyone and every participant has enjoyed it. So before moving on to the next thing, I would like to raise questions which has been asked from various audiences. The first question we have is from Yamini, who is asking that as women, we facilitate such privilege of choice of participating in household, etc. work, even though it is done because of lifelong conditioning. What can be done about that now?
Okay. Uh, Thank you, Yamini, for your question. That yes, there is this dilemma before us that we are women, and because of our conditioning, we have to take care of the household chores, and that is why I'm saying that we will have to start it from our own selves. That now, when we have our children, we won't, teach them that it is the duty of a girl to take care of the household chores. So. Work is not associated with any identity. I don't think so. So any work should be done by anyone if it is required. So men as well as women, both of them should understand that. And that is our responsibility to teach people and our children further. Okay. I hope
Thank
that
you, ma'am.
answers your question.
I guess so. The next question is from my side only. That during this pandemic time, it is not just through domestic abuse, but there are also many of the crimes which are happening around the system, that like cyber crimes, and women are consistently being scrutinized and harassed through these platforms. And this idea that everyone can participate is placing and giving the control to everyone to define what is to be done, or what is right to be done, or who deserves the respect and who does not. So what can we do about that?
Okay. Yes, as I said, I have already mentioned in my lecture that in this pandemic, women have been exploited on so many fronts, and yes, cyber crime has been involved in that too. Uh, I can't say that we can change the mentality of those people who are getting involved with so heinous crimes. But I will definitely would like to say that it is our responsibility that when so many people are dying because of a because of a disease, what are we doing? Are we make our society dead too? Okay, by influencing and by leaving so different kind of impacts on our society, and by cursing our own women by the means of cybercrime, are we trying to make our society dead? So it's like, on the one hand, the government and others are uh, uh, dealing with a pandemic, disease pandemic, but on the other hand we are also dealing with social pandemic. Okay, so this, I would never like to appreciate such kind of activities, and yes, government should definitely take some measures against such kind of activities. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. And the next question we have two questions from Dr. Farhat Nusri.
Hmm.
First is that the Adam and Eve are classically a part of only some religions. Can you think of any such parallel model from religions that do not believe in the existence of Adam and Eve?
Yes, definitely. I took the example of Adam and Eve because this Abrahamical religion is quite popular. Like, Christianity, Judaism, and Islamism have been the most, one of the most, three of the most popular religion in our world. But there are other religions as well. But Hinduism is not a religion, so I couldn't take the example of that. Uh, if we consider other religions in the name of, like, the tribal communities, the religions of tribal communities, there too, first of all, their contribution in the gender discrimination is not that great. So I thought that I can, for now, not accept them, and take their point lightly, because they have not been the ones who have been the majorly responsible for this gender unequal society. So mostly the gender unequal society which we are living in today is due to this Adam and Eve thought, where we think that it is the Eve who has been responsible. And if we talk about Hinduism, which is not a religion, but there too, even though we eulogize women, but on the other hand, we rape women too. So what kind of equality then we are looking for there? Because we will have to decide whether we want to pray them, or praise them, or we want to rape them. So such kind of influences and such kind of activities are actually, if one religion is doing something and that religion is very influential, that also influences other cultures as well. So that was my point of view. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. And the another question is from Dr. Farhat Nusri, that the biological makeup of men and women will always remain different, no matter how they are. In this context, what are the areas that need more immediate attention? Are they fighting equality, giving more teeth to the laws to that protect women? Can you comment on that? And also, can we not respect gender-based differences instead of trying to work towards gender neutrality?
Okay, yeah, Farhat, it's a very important question and very crucial one. That yes, biological differences are there, but my understanding is that biological, any kind of biological work which we are associated with is not enforced on us. It's like, we have eyes, but we are not enforced to see. So we have uterus. Why are we enforced to give birth to childs? But on the other hand, if you are saying that we should be giving more importance to gender based identities or gender based roles rather than gender neutral roles, but in this capitalistic society it becomes very hard to achieve that status. So that is why I argue that it would be better that if we don't associate any gender to that work, and rather than associating a gender with that work, we think that it is a work of a person. So whether that person is a man or a woman, it doesn't matter, because both of them, in a married life, both of them are partners, and they will have to take care of all the household chores and responsibility of children. So just because someone's biology is involved there, it should not be the only and sole responsibility of that person. Okay.
So, I guess related to the previous question, Farhat Nusreen ma'am has also pointed about giving your comments on Sati Pratha.
Okay, yeah, sati pratha. Okay, sati immolation is obviously can never ever be acceptable, because I don't think that people might say that it is their choice, and if they want to die, what is wrong with that? But this choice is also very much conditioned, because and also, there is no, not only gender calculation, but there is also political and economic calculation which is working there. basically this sati pratha was mainly limited in one or the two communities of India, the Rajputana communities. And it is a little story that they were the ones that these women used to hold the rights over the property of their husbands, and when their husbands die because of the wars and all, then they used to have the rights over those properties. But if they die, then obviously that will go to another man. So it was the transfer of property from one man to another man, and that is why they were conditioned to immolate themselves in order to get respect in the society. So I don't think that this is something which is related to the respect of women. It is rather related to the economic and political gains of men.
Okay. And also, like, there's another question by Seneca Falls, who asks that, so basically, can we say this is related to human rights? First of all, when we see someone else, we should see the person as human first, and then give the person all the rights as well.
Okay. Thank you, Sevkate, for such a nice question. Uh, I would like to say two things here. First of all, that when I'm saying that we cannot forget our past, obviously we cannot treat a woman as a person then, because she has been suppressed by at so many levels that if we start treating her as equal to men, then her problems will not be resolved. But when we are talking about the future and the present, then the initiatives which we have to take, which we have to start, then we will have to deal with her as a person. So there are two steps. One is that you will have to make extra arrangements for her to become a person first. Okay, because till now she is not a person, she is not a human being. She has been considered to be slave, she has been considered to be subordinate being, blah blah blah. So first of all, we will have to take steps so that she can become a person, and then once she has become a person, then we will have to treat both, all the genders, not both, all the genders as persons only. So yes, then human rights approach.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for these information that you have given. That so many of these information were actually never read before. So thank you very much. And on behalf of everyone and on all the audiences, I thank you and congratulate you, ma'am, for this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pooja. Thank you. Okay.
So with this, I guess we can conclude the session.
Okay. I hope you people liked it, and since the recording will be available, and I'm always open to further questions and remarks, so give me your further remarks so that I can improvise on my own thoughts. And I will also end with saying that I hope that you will start not treating someone on the or discriminating against someone just because they are different from you in terms of their class, sex, or race or gender. So please try to do that and change your language, change your behavior. So probably we will be in a world which will be a gender neutral world sometimes. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reetu Jaiswal and Ms. Pooja Raj, for your contributions today. And thank you everyone else for joining us today. The video will be uploaded very soon on our YouTube channel. I request you to subscribe to the channel and share the previous videos and this one too as soon as it is uploaded. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.